Hi to everyone in Anchorage, Alaska. Thank you so much for having me at this fundraiser for the Community Pregnancy Center. Wish I could be with you in person. I'm going to tell my story, and I'm also going to share the uplifting pro-life stories of my 3 adopted children. I've been through tragedies recently, and so instead of merely sharing my own life story, I would like to honor them tonight. I was adopted, and I learned at 18 that I was conceived when my birth mother was abducted by a serial rapist. She went to 2 illegal abortions, and I was almost aborted. But she backed out because it was illegal. Fear for her own safety. She was pro-choice when we met and told me that if abortion had been legal, she would have aborted me. And I literally owe my birth to the law which protected me. I owe my birth because of pro-life advocates who cared enough to recognize that mine was a life worth saving. And they were my heroes. They saved my life. Pro-life activists, voters, legislators are my heroes. And some of us are in need of heroes. I wanted to adopt, not second best, last resort, only for the infertile, but God's first choice and meant for the body of Christ. So we adopted first. And we have had 3 adopted children. Caleb, then Cassie, then Kyler, who's Caleb's half-brother, and then 3 biological daughters, Karina, Corley, and Contessa. And we also lost 2 babies to miscarriage, 2 precious lives. Caleb's birth mother was 16 when he was born and 18 when Kyler was born. Cassie's birth mother was 35, and she'd had 2 abortions and said that there was no way that she was going to go through that again, that it was the worst thing ever, and that she felt that there was no reason at this point in her life why she could not have this baby. And I met her when she was only 2 months into her pregnancy. We were preparing to adopt Caleb, and we adopted him. Cassie was to be due 7 months later. So I would have my hands full with 2 young ones. But we were preparing to adopt Cassie, and she was born 3 weeks early, to everyone's surprise, with a very serious genetic disorder. Now, at both of her ultrasounds, they said there might be something wrong with her heart. But they told us that they got a better look and everything was fine. But we assured her birth mother, that regardless, she's our child, we're praying for her, we want to adopt her, whatever God gives us. But in the hospital, we had doctors, nurses, social workers, our adoption attorney, telling us, you don't have to bring her home. Nobody would blame you. And when they finally diagnosed her with DiGeorge Syndrome, which is a deletion of genetic material on chromosome 22, section Q11, there was a 0.2 deletion, and that caused all of her anomalies. I looked this up, and all I could find was information on how to detect it in utero so that you could have the opportunity to abort. And most of the babies who had what Cassie had were aborted. We were told that the first few days were critical. She spent 12 days in Children's Hospital and came home and was thriving. So at her checkup at 33 days old, her cardiologist said that the hole in her heart was closing, and that she probably wouldn't need surgery on it, but that he needed to take her off of oxygen because it was inviting too much fluid into her heart. Right after the appointment, without him doing any further screening, because I knew he was in a hurry, but I was excited about this benchmark. Cassie stopped breathing, and we did CPR. Her birth mother happened to be with me this particular day, and EMS came. They resuscitated her at the hospital, and then again, more medical malpractice when some residents did a procedure without permission from the head doctor, and it caused her to stop breathing again, and we watched Cassie go into cardiac arrest. By the time they resuscitated her the second time, she had significant brain damage, and at a Catholic hospital, they were telling us to discontinue epinephrine and just let her go. That even if she pulled through, you would have to consider what her quality of life will be. And I told them, let me make one thing clear. We are pro-life. And I'm not going to stand here and listen to you devalue the life of my daughter. We will take care of her. And then the doctor asked, are you Christians? Because I am too. And I thought, well, good for you. And I literally had to tell this doctor, back off. And I thought, they really messed up. They ought to be doing everything they can. And I was told that the first 24 hours are critical by my friend from Nurses for Life. And we had 7.5 hours when she first stopped breathing, every moment of which was precious to us. We were able to dedicate her into God's hands and write a letter out to her. And in the last moments, they couldn't keep her blood pressure up any longer. So I held her, her birth mother held her, and then she died in the arms of her earthly father, from the arms of one loving father to the next. And it was absolutely, at the time, the most difficult thing that we'd ever been through, but it was truly an honor to take care of her. And I had complete tunnel vision during that time that this is what really matters in life. And it was, taking care of her was truly one of the most important things that I'd ever done in my life. When Caleb was a baby, I would show him the photos of the two of them together, and we'd talk a lot about Cassie. When he was a baby, he was really brilliant. My mother-in-law wanted to know how many words he was saying at 10 months, so I started writing out all the words. He had 80 words in 10 months, clear as a bell. He could say octopus. And then at 1.5 years old, it was September 11th, and we took him to a rally a week later, and he knew all of the songs that were sung, all the patriotic songs, because we had a CD that we listened to in the car all the time. So he could belt out like the Armed Forces medley, and people would look at this 18-month-old and say, how old is he? Because it was almost kind of freakish. And then when he was about 20 months old, I walked into the kitchen and Caleb was standing on a chair. I said, Caleb, what are you doing? And he said, I want to go up. I want to go up heaven and see Cassie. And I just started to have tears coming out of my eyes. It was my worst fear. I'd already lost one child, and I told him, no, you can't. He said, why not? I said, because it's not God's timing for you. God has special plans for your life. But he was always very heaven-minded. We found out about his brother, and they were only 20 months apart. We knew that they were going to grow up knowing each other. And so we gave the birth mother Cassie's crib. And we knew something was wrong because at 7 months pregnant, she wasn't showing at all. And then when he was born, we called to get them together when Kyler was about 2 months old, just after Christmas. And we found out that he was taken away that morning, and it was in the news that night. His biological father had tried to drown him. He was high on heroin at the time, and the report said that Kyler had bruises up and down his back. The birth mother had tested positive for heroin 4 times during her pregnancy, in jail, pregnant on heroin. Another difficult case. We had been told with Caleb that he was conceived with the date rape drug, that she had gone to a rave party. Only knew the guy's first name. He was 18 years old, never saw him again. And so both of them would have been, so-called difficult cases. Today, nationwide, only 1% choose adoption in unplanned pregnancies. Over 50% abort. But Nicole's grandparents, my son's great-grandparents, were pro-life activists. They prayed outside of abortion clinics. They were out there for Life Chain. They supported their local pregnancy resource center. And they set the example for everyone in the family to know that abortion is never an option. And so Nicole chose adoption. Facing trial on the child abuse and neglect charges when Kyler was a year old, his biological parents finally consented to us adopting him. And I remember the first time we went to see him and the boys were connecting at the foster home. And then when I was driving them home, they were in the back seat and they were looking at each other, Caleb 2.5 and Kyler a year old. And they were looking at one another doing this. And I thought, look at them, they're communicating, brothers. It was so great. Kyler didn't really end up talking much until he was 3 years old. So it was really quite the opposite, but at least, they were communicating, and I thought that was so cool. But when they got home, once Kyler crawled towards Caleb's toys, Caleb just pounced on him. Didn't want him touching his toys. And then I remember him saying, he's not my real brother. You can take him back. I don't want him anymore. And I told him, no matter how you look at it, he's your real brother. I remember there was a point when Caleb was challenging me when he was maybe 10 years old. And I remember him saying, you're not my real parents. And I said to him, oh, I'm not, am I? You're right. I'm only pretending to be your mom. In fact, I'm not even a real human. This isn't even real skin. I'm a robot. I'm just pretending to be a person who's pretending to be your mom. And he broke and he just cracked up, and he realized he can't pull that trick on me because I was adopted, and it was great. Well, there's some cool lessons from my boys when they were young. They, of course, had been to the ultrasounds for their sisters. They understood about human life. When Caleb was about 2 years old and 2 months, he started coming up on stage with me when I was speaking. His very first road trip with me for speaking was when he was 2 months old. I have pictures of him sitting at the dais with me and even, eating at the head table in a high chair. It was so cute. So they traveled with me all over. I homeschooled till Caleb was in 7th grade. And they went overseas with me and all over the place. It was a lot of fun. So Caleb would get up on stage at 2 years old, and I'd ask him, tell everybody what we pray for. And he'd say, we pray that the abortion doctors won't be able to hurt the unborn babies anymore. And then I would ask him, tell everybody what happened. And he would proclaim the gospel about how Jesus died on a cross and, the stone was rolled away and that he rose from the dead. And if you believe in Jesus, you could go to heaven too. And everybody would clap and he'd put his arms up like, hey. It was neat to see that. Then started taking Kyler with me as well. Caleb was an only child for 2.5 years, except for the 1 month that we had Cassie, the 33 days we had Cassie. And then we had our other children. So I had 5 children in my home, ages 7 and under at one point. And it was crazy, but it was fantastic. And again, we had so much fun. They were raised on everything Christian, Veggie Tales and Angel Wings, Kingdom Under the Sea, Adventures in Odyssey, the Chronicles of Narnia, I mean, you name it. And my boys were like Bible whizzes, and they did Bible memorization kind of stuff. But they really cared about unborn human life. We had a book called Gertie's Not Alone. And it was a children's picture book with farm animals. And there was this hen, and her rooster was being taken away. And she had an egg, and she was lamenting, what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of my egg? And, my rooster's gone. And there were all of these barn animals telling her, oh, you need to move on with your life. Just get rid of it. It's only an egg. And, you need to think about yourself. All the different arguments you hear for abortion and that it's your choice. There was one other animal that was pleading with her, a little lamb. No, don't do this. This is your egg. If your unborn chick, if you do this, you'll be sad about it forever. And then they started arguing. She can do what she wants. It's her choice. And then as everyone's arguing, all of a sudden the egg starts to shake and then crack. And then her chick is born, and everybody instantly delights. Oh, how wonderful. Look at that. What a miracle. How amazing. And then it said Gertie was never alone again. So my children learned the reasons why women are abortion-minded. And we would go to our local pregnancy resource center and visit centers around the country. And they would see the help that's offered and understood that abortion clinics don't offer any help or hope, only abortion. At one point, when my son was about 3, Caleb wanted to know, what exactly do they do to hurt the unborn babies? And I said, it's really scary. I want to wait to tell you till you get older. And he said, no, Mom, I need to know. And I told him, well, actually, they kill the unborn babies. And he just, they kill them? He was so upset. He just couldn't believe that. It's just so awful. Then when he was about 5 years old, we were at McMaster University in Ontario. And the Students for Life group was explaining to us that the hospital on campus is where most of the abortions are done in that area. And as we're walking out to our car, my son stopped. And he said, they're doing abortions in there right now? We should go in there and stop them. And we all looked at each other like, duh. And then I'd explained to him that we can't do that because if we did, we would be arrested. And he said, well, why would they arrest you? And I had explained to him about the court case. And, in the United States, we have Roe versus Wade. And he said, well, then we need to get rid of those judges, those bad judges. And I said, well, the Supreme Court justices are appointed by the president. So we have to have a good pro-life president. He said, well, no, we need to have a good pro-life president. I said, well, you can only do that by, voting. When you vote every 4 years for pro-life president, then they can appoint the pro-life justices. And he said, well, then we need to do that right away. And he could not understand why in all these years it had not already been done. And he asked, don't people understand? Don't they know what's happening? And he could not fathom why people didn't care enough to do the right thing and to help protect the innocent preborn. When we were in Ireland. I was speaking at a street rally. And we were out there holding different signs. And there were some people there who had signs of pictures of aborted babies. And I remember Caleb, he was 7 years old, 7.5 years old. And he asked, Mom, is that real? I said, yeah, Caleb, that's real. And after a while longer, he said to me, Mom, I can't look at that picture anymore. Can I turn around? I said, yeah, it's upsetting to me too. Let's both turn around. And then it was just a few years later when he saw the pictures from Priests for Life, where you see a quarter and a dime and the aborted baby's arms or legs next to that dime or quarter to give perspective so you can understand the size of these babies being aborted. And my son, asked, what are you looking at? And I showed him, and he just said, that's murder. That's murder. Yeah. My son, Kyler, here's a handful always. I taught all of my kids to quilt from a young age. My daughter Coralie made her first quilt when she was 5. I started making quilts when my youngest was born. So Caleb made his first quilt when he was around 7 or so. And each of my boys made 3 quilts. They each made one for their birth mother. We have one of Caleb's quilts still. But Kyler wanted to make a quilt for our local pregnancy resource center. But he wanted to make sure that it would be given to an abortion-minded woman and that she would be told his story and that this quilt was made by him so that she would have her baby. So sweet, so very sweet. When Kyler was about 11 years old, he wrote out his story entitled, What Exceptions Do You Make? And it was published in my organization's blog and in Life News, Life Site News, Live Action. Live Action just republished it recently. And in it, he tells, all his family stories, how so much of his family would have been aborted because of the exceptions that people make. And he told how he had been, drug exposed in utero and abused, but how he said, I was adopted by a great family. And he said, I'm a good kid. I have friends at school and I volunteer and I help at church and I love my family. I play sports, and talked about all the different things that he did and how he's a good brother to his sisters and how he loves his birth mother. And then he said, but not everyone is as fortunate as I am. And he said that I want to speak to the exceptions people. And he said, when you make exceptions, it affects people like me who wouldn't be here, by everyone else's standards. And he said, everyone deserves life, not just the fortunate. It's cool that we have this legacy from our sons. There were so many great lessons I learned from them. When my kids were really young, I told them a story how growing up, my adoptive father would tell us bedtime stories and how he had this alter ego. And he was a superhero. When we would go to sleep at night, he would put on a cape and he'd fly out the window and he'd go off and through crazy escapades ultimately get the bad guy. So I started to tell my children that, and actually, Mommy's a superhero too. And I remember my kids were really young and they said, stop it, Mom. You're just trying to trick us. You're not a superhero. I thought, I don't even get to tell the story, have fun with them. we went to see the movie The Incredibles, and I said, oh, just like Mommy. Mom, you are not a superhero. And then we were going to see the movie Sky High. And I was reading the description of the movie, how the parents are both superheroes. And the mom has a cape and she can fly. And my son was about, at the time, about 6 years old. And Caleb says to me, Mom, you are not a superhero. He rolls his eyes. And I told him, but I want to be. And he stopped to think and he says, well, you save babies. I thought, oh, wow, come here, give me a hug. Like, he thinks I'm a real superhero. And after that, they wanted to tell a story that night about how I was, super mom, and they made their younger sister, Coralie, super baby. And they said that she was hanging onto my cape and that she was laughing the way she would always laugh, and that we would spot a bad guy abortion doctor. And I mean, this is how my kids think, that, she took off her poopy diaper and slung it at the abortion doctor and knocked him out. And he was all grossed out and laying on the ground. And then they, held him down till the police came and took him away to jail. And, that's how kids think, right? But it was a lot of fun. We had good times at the whole Supermom story, and I got all my kids costumes with capes, and we would all wear them together and tell stories. It was really great. The truth is that anytime you get involved in the pro-life movement, you defend life, you are a superhero. So when you support the work of the Community Pregnancy Center, you're a superhero. You're setting an example for your own family, for generations to come, of what matters in life. Our recent tragedy was on July 29th. Caleb and Kyler were both killed. And it's been a very difficult season for us. Unfortunately, there was that whole history of drug abuse in their family. The whole culture of death, where the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And their birth mother was hooked on heroin for decades. Her mother was a drug addict. Her father died in his 30s from alcohol abuse. His father died in his 30s from alcohol abuse. Kyler's biological father and uncle were both drug addicts. And their maternal uncles were both drug addicts. In fact, one of their uncles died 1 month after they did. And they had gotten hooked on Xanax, and it ended up being entirely fentanyl. I knew nothing of this, but they died from fentanyl poisoning. They had no intention of dying. And I'm so grateful for the words of Christ when he said that no one can steal them from my hands. These are my sheep. And I know that when they first believed in him, that they were marked with the seal of the Holy Spirit as a guarantee of their inheritance. And I know where they are today. And I'm so grateful for the gift of life. And there may be some things I would go back and do differently. But one thing I would not do differently is to adopt them, because their lives matter. And they were absolutely precious. And they deserved the chance at life, just like every child does. Again, thank you so much for having me, and I hope that tonight you will give generously to support this important work so that other mothers just like them, just like their birth mother, will have hope and help so that they can have the chance at life too. Thank you.